In this video, I'm going to be talking about the ways in which we can deal with distractions on the field. I'll also be discussing the features that make poker such a distracting environment and give you a few ideas on what you can do to get refocused anytime you need to. So if that sounds interesting to you, just keep watching. I want to welcome you back to the channel, and if you're new here, I'm Dr. Tricia Cardner, and I make weekly videos where I teach poker players how to improve their mindsets. Obviously, focus is a huge part of winning poker. And when I think of focus for poker, what I'm talking about is the extent to which you pay attention to the factors that matter most. This will be things like positional awareness, awareness of your opponent's tendencies, pre-flop ranges, that sort of thing. You want to be focused so that you can take high-value actions that are related to those topics so you can win more money. I'd like for you to think about your ability to focus at the table for a second. How good are you at maintaining your focus? How good are you at staying on task? Of course, everyone loses focus some of the time. It's a psychological fact that we can't stay focused 100% of the time, especially over long periods of time. The brain simply has its limitations. I'd like to ask you to play detective for a moment. Think back through to a recent session and rate yourself on how well you were at detecting that you had gotten distracted and lost focus. Go one step further and rate how good you were at getting back on task. If you're not really good at noticing when you're getting distracted as well as refocusing yourself when it happens, that's definitely going to lead you to be vulnerable. And one of the most common distractions is mental chatter. I've got a whole course called Escape from the Downswing Trap that teaches players how to manage their thoughts and emotions. I'll leave a link in the description box below just in case you're interested. Not being able to defend against distractions directly affects your performance, and therefore your poker game overall will suffer. Let's go over several factors that can influence your competitive focus. And as I review these, see how you think you might become distracted and lose your focus when you're challenged by certain factors. The first factor I want to discuss is the immediate performance situation acting as a distraction. For example, you might be down on the session and be feeling pressure to make up for losses so that you can get positive for the day. Or you might have played a hand poorly and then be kicking yourself for the money you've lost. The problem with these lines of thinking is that they cause you to focus on something other than what you need to be focused on. And it's important to note that there are many poker situations that can trigger distractions. Even positive poker situations like running hot can challenge your focus because you might get caught up into an internal debate as to whether or not you should cash out and take your profit and run, or stay and see if you can run it up. Boredom is another immediate situation distraction that you need to be on guard for. Specifically, when we're just not getting any hands and we're sitting there and we get bored, we might end up looking at our phones, going through social media, or watching sports or Netflix, anything just to take the edge off the boredom. By losing focus in this manner, we miss opportunities that could help us be profitable. Another aspect of distractions is centered around the location of our thoughts and feelings. It's always how we perceive a situation that will determine how we respond. We measure our perception by what we tell ourselves about a situation and how we feel. It's very critical that you stay engaged in the present moment, but unfortunately, our thoughts have a way of going either to the past or to the future. And the past is usually us being worried about some sort of loss, whereas future thinking orients around thinking about how our overall session is going to unfold in a certain imagined way. And all this is going to affect how we play. It's critical that we get into the present. I want you to recognize that there will always be noise in the form of this mental chatter, especially if we've been on a losing streak. It is really common, as I've already said, to think back into the past and get caught ruminating about those losses, as well as to be worried about how the next hand is going to play out. For example, imagine if you've been getting it in good, but you keep getting sucked out on. It's likely that you'll start wondering about whether or not that is going to keep happening. The mind has a very natural tendency to go back into the past and fast forward into the future. The key question for you to ask yourself is, will I develop the mindfulness skills I need to recognize when I'm distracted and to bring my focus back to the task at hand in the present moment? Or will I allow my mind and feelings to hijack me into the past or into the future? Another class of items that can distract from your competitive focus consists of people, places, and things. Let me give you a couple of examples. You may have had an argument with your significant other before you sit down to play, and then while you're sitting there, you find your mind drifting to that. Or perhaps you played a hand in a certain way, and you know that Poker News is reporting on it, and you start wondering what people are going to be saying about you in the forums. If you do notice that you've been impacted by some sort of distraction, what you need to do is to train yourself to be able to notice this and then return your focus to the appropriate poker task. What you need is Distraction Defense 101. I'd like to introduce you to a strategy that you can use anytime you feel your focus slipping. The first step is that you need to be very clear on what needs your attention right now. What do you need to most be focusing on at this moment? What will give you the biggest return on your investment if you put your full attention and focus on it, much like a laser? The next step is that you want to practice recognizing when your mind has slipped off the poker tasks that you've identified in step 1. After you detect a change in your focus, observe what your mind might be telling you. This is the basic mindfulness skill that you can and should practice regularly. Remember, your thoughts are merely thoughts and feelings are just feelings. They come and go, and they are not commands that you must obey. For step 3, you want to bring yourself momentarily to a neutral state, and this is going to take a little effort. An easy way to do this is to change your physical position. So if you're sitting down, stand up for a minute and stretch out. If you have time, you could take a short walk or go get a drink of water. Your goal is to take yourself out of a distracted state and get into a neutral state. After you've gotten yourself into a neutral state, you want to use a short refocusing phrase, something like, "Get back to the felt," or "I'm back on task." It's important that your phrase be something short and to the point that will help remind you to refocus your attention onto what is most important. In step 5, you want to make sure that you're back on track. How do you do that? Well, you go back to step 1, where you decided what needs your attention the most right now, and ask yourself, am I attending to that? And if you are, then you know you're back on track, at least for now, because a lot of times it's going to take repetition, because remember, being in a state of distraction is the normal state for the majority of us. I want to stress that even if you follow this process, sometimes distractions and your mental chatter will make it difficult to refocus. It takes a lot of effort and practice in order to get your mind to where you can focus distraction-free for longer periods of time and to get back to focus quickly. I recognize that it's very difficult to create new habits and that sometimes distractions and mental chatter can make it difficult for us to refocus. One thing you can try is something called implementation intentions, which is a fancy name for a plan. And an implementation intention takes the form of, if X happens, then I will do Y. So in this case, your implementation intention could be, if I find myself getting distracted, then I will go through the steps that Dr. Cardner has outlined for me. Feel free to experiment with coming up with some of your own implementation intentions. I cannot stress enough that if you start tracking and really paying attention to how your mind works and working to do things that make it perform better, you're going to get better results. Yes, improving your focus during emotionally charged situations is probably one of the more challenging things to teach yourself, but with enough practice and work, I have faith that you can do it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, keep working on your mindset.